Good morning, everybody. I'm Francesco Osimanti. I'm a project manager and vice coordinator of the HSbooster initiative, and I'm very pleased to welcome you all here today for our second workshop, building the HSbooster Standardization Training Academy. Well, while we concentrated on during our first event in the summertime, we tried to give you a global understanding of our initiative with a key objective, the main expectation. With today's appointment, we would like to steer a bit more the conversation to another topical pillar of the Horizon Result Booster, the educational dimension, and also how the building of this academy, setting up this academy will address some key points like the lack of training and education in standardization and other aspects that we are going to tackle here with our lineup of speakers. So while giving the time to our audience to flow in the event, by the way, I'm very glad to witness a great engagement to this event that stress the importance of the topic we are going to talk about. We have today online more of 200 people that will join our workshop. I would like to give you, before diving into the topics that we are going to face today, a quick overview of what the HS Booster is. The European Standardization Booster is an European funded project of 24 months. You can see here the consortium of partners handling the project: Compla as a leading coordinator, Trusted Services, Dublin City University, the University of Belgrade, Danish standards national bodies, Dansk Standards, and SGS. We started a few months ago, back in April, and we will perform the overall project in the next 2 years until March 24. The main goals, you can see here the main goals of our project. What we want to do is to provide professional guidance and services to European projects to help them both to increase and valorize their project results, and to, in view of help them to contribute to the creation of a possible revision of existing standards. What we aim to achieve within the booster is to facilitate and streamline the dialogue between Horizon 2020 and the Horizon Europe project with the standardization landscape. So we want to bridge the gap and shorten the distance between these two ecosystems, and we want them to talk regularly and more effectively to each other in view of raising a strategic awareness and build expertise and skills in standardization. How are we going to do this? Probably you have already got familiar with our open call. We launched our first open call back in June. We will run this series of 5 open calls. By the way, and I would like to point out here that the first one is going to be closed on the 30th of September, and then we will start the delivery of our services. Nonetheless, I also have to reassure you that the open calls are actually ongoing. So we will not have any interruption between the different series of open calls. We have 5 main key priorities. You can see it featured here: health, resilience, sustainable digitalization, European green transition, smart cities, and circular economy. Under each of these pillars, we have also a subset of more specific and detailed open calls. Priorities. The main open call priorities actually reflect the urgencies stressed in a very important document, the European Strategy on Standardization. But we also heavily rely on another important document released at the beginning of the year by the DG Research and Innovation of the Commission, is the scoping study for supporting the development of a code of practice for researchers on standardization. I'm not going to linger too much on this because we have today among our guests our policy officer Gergely Tardos from the Research and Innovation DG, and he's going to walk us through the main aspect of this document, and you will have the opportunity to get to know more about this. In this regard, the booster services are supposed to meet the needs and the priorities of the European Standardization Organization, the national standard bodies, and international SBOs on the whole. It's also noteworthy here, I'd like to bring to your attention the crucial role that plays our external advisory group within our project. You see here this list of a reputable experts coming from different technological background, from industry and vertical sectors, and from a wide array of standard developing organization. The EAG is crucial for us to keep the project on track and to provide a high-level strategic guidance and to better refine the urgencies and the priorities of our open call. And by the way, you'll see few of them featured in this sketch during our webinar and the following roundtables. At the same time, alongside the open call open for European funded projects, we are also recruiting and setting up a comprehensive pool of standardization experts that will completely cover all the domains we are tackling to provide our services. And we'll provide this series of experts are supposed to provide coaching and mentoring session to European projects in their standardization practices and procedures, and to help them to step into the corresponding standardization domain. So cutting a bit to the chase, I would like to give you a short teaser with this question of that will be tackled by our speakers, by our guests in a few minutes. Why are we doing this webinar today? To present you one of the major expectation and goal of the project. We want to set up a completely developed training academy in the coming months, because we want to effectively address the standardization needs and education and provide available and freely available additional material for a wide range of participants, regardless their degree of expertise in standardization, starting from very beginners, intermediate level, and the advanced ones. So in this workshop, we wanted to together to make the best expert standardizational professional coming from SBOs and NSBs and European standard organization come together to share their experience and to tackle the specific aspects, challenges, and opportunities deriving from standardization and education. So very briefly through the agenda, after my introduction, I will leave the floor to Gergely Tardos. Gergely is a policy officer at Directorate General for R&I of the European Commission. He is going to explain us better the scoping study, and he will tell us more on the Commission angle on education and standardization. He will be followed by my colleague Ivana Mijatovic. She's a professor at the Faculty of Organizational Sciences at the University of Belgrade. And she is also actually the main leader, the main driver of the future training academy. We have also envisioned for these workshops 2 different roundtables, tackling 2 different topics. The first one, how to serve the SMEs community, how to better valorize the research and innovation outputs on standardization. And we want also to provide you an overview of the linkage between the booster and the StandICT Standard Academy, another like-minded project that probably you have already heard about. The panelists of this roundtable, led by Mr. Ray Walsh, my colleague in the project and professor at the Dublin City University, will be again Ivana Mijatovic, Maria Jankovic. She is a postdoctoral research associate at Informatic Technology Institute of CERT. Brian McAuliffe, he is the director of technology standards at HP, but he's also the director of the EUOS Academy in StandICT. And Mrs. Maiten Olabaria. She is the Secretary General at Small Business Standards. We will have then a very quick break of 2-3 minutes, and we will resume with the second roundtable. The second roundtable will tackle the current training and educational programs in Europe. The leader and the moderator of the roundtable will be my colleague Pernille Bengtsen from Dansk Standard, project manager at Dansk Standard, and we will feature Mr. Daniel Masvarguado, head of knowledge and agenda 2030 at the Spanish National Standard Bodies, PUNE, Herman Behrens, head of science and research relations at DIN, Mr. David Bosvartik, the director of new technologies at HETSI, Hesher Ganesh, director of market perspective and innovation at Sense Enelec, and Mr. Daniele Gerundino. He is a member of the board of the Italian Study Center on Standardization, UNI, again, the Italian national standard bodies. So a bit of housekeeping, very shortly before leaving the floor to Gergo. I would like to share with you a few pointers. The event is going to be fully recorded, so if you're going to miss some part, don't worry about that. It's going to be uploaded on our social media. It will be stored on our webpage, so it is going to be freely available, reachable in the aftermath of the event. Already tomorrow it will be free for your usage. You can ask question at any time. You're more than welcome to drop any question in the Q&A box at the very bottom of your screen, so you can use that feature. The suggestion I'd like to give you is to specifically address the speaker you want to reach out by tagging him, so you will facilitate their role in getting back to you. And the very last thing, very quick, allow me to do a very quick call to action to all of you. I would like you to reach out all of your community, so please promote the initiative to the projects you are linked and you are intertwined with. So you are going to get many benefits by submitting an application that are likely coming in these days, and the support of our expert is going to be valuable. I can ensure you to create and generate more impact and valorize the result of your research and innovation activity. These are some of our references on social media. So please follow us so you can stay updated and fully aligned with the activities and the future events we will carry out in the coming months. At this point, I think it's really time to dive into each presentation and core of the event, and I would like to pass the floor to Gergely to start his presentation. Gergely, good morning, and I'm really honored and pleased to have you here with us this morning.
Many thanks, Francesco, and good morning, everyone. It's also a pleasure for me to be here. I'm very happy to see the project progressing. So I'm from DG Research and Innovation. I'm a policy officer in a unit which is called Valorisation Policies and IPR. This unit was created only 3 years ago with an ultimate goal of to demonstrate that investing in R&I cannot end at project results, but it has to ensure that these results are ready for market, or there shall be some tools that brings these results to the market. From our DG's point, from our DG Research and Innovation point, the most obvious is to regard standardization as a channel for knowledge valorization, because we firmly believe that they help researchers bring their innovation to the market and spread the technological advances by making their results transparent. If I may have the next one, please. So with other words, the idea back 2.5 years ago was to explore what the Commission could do in order to valorize the results of excellent research projects and to define and develop different channels for knowledge valorization. And this approach can be probably the best explained by the scheme on this slide. You can see here the main actors, the valorization channels, and the tools to be used. And as you can see, there is a purple box, which is called IP management and standardization 2 years ago. So this slide is from 2 years ago. And back then it was one channel, basically, actually it was a sub-channel. But today, standardization is one of the most important channels of the valorization landscape. And this is very much clearly reflected by its position in the political agenda. So the idea was to implement these policy considerations, and for that it was very crucial to get the political support. And thanks to strong advocacy along these lines, knowledge valorization became a fundamental element of the ERA communication, the European Research Area communication in 2020. So we ended up designing so-called Action 7 of the European Research Area communication, which says that we need to translate the results into economy and ensure market uptake. And how do we do this? We're giving guiding principles to stakeholders and member states for knowledge valorization. Now, these guiding principles will be implemented by a set of codes of practice. And the goal will be to develop one code per each knowledge valorization channel. Currently, we are developing a code for the smart use of intellectual assets and the code of practice on standardization for researchers. So this is the first time when standardization is introduced to a European Research Area policy document. So the last slide on the context. And then came the European Industrial Strategy and the Standardization Strategy, which made the approach even more explicit. All this clearly indicate that inside the Union, there is a new way of focusing on standardization as means of knowledge valorization, boost the market uptake of R&I results, and contribute to better products and services. So in the standardization strategy, there is a chapter on cutting edge innovation that fosters timely standards, which basically focus on two things. On one hand, strengthening the link between standardization and R&I through the European Research Area, and secondly, enabling Horizon Europe to bridge the gap between R&I results and market uptake of R&I results. So this slide here reflects well the two main policy strands. On one hand, the code of practice, which I'm going to talk about now, and the booster itself, which is the project for which we are all here together. So if I may have the next one. So I reached this with the slide, the code of practice on standardization for researchers. So what are the objectives of this code of practice? So the overall objective of this code is to contribute to the successful synchronization and systemic integration of R&I and standardization by providing guidance to researchers and innovators exploring the use of standards as a powerful and effective knowledge valorization channel. It aims to identify elements of good practice for researchers and innovators dealing with standardization in the course of R&I projects. If we move on to the next one, I would give you a snapshot on the process, how we developed the code of practice. So first, last year, we identified a Horizon 2020 project sample with text mining tool. Basically, we dug into project documentation such as reports and deliverables. And by that, we set up an extensive list of projects that is relevant for standardization. This sample was composed of about 2,200 Horizon 2020 projects, representing a large variety of projects, potentially from all sections of the program. And then we addressed these selected projects by a survey to make it possible to analyze relevant project data. On the basis of the survey, we ran a scoping study for the code of practice with the ultimate aim to identify good patterns and actually replicable good patterns, and to provide a set of recommendations on how beneficiaries of public R&I funds can best valorize project results through standardization. So the recommendations are there to help future beneficiaries of public R&I programs, not necessarily public, but the general R&I projects. We organized a workshop with practitioners in December 2021 to validate the findings of the study. Participants included universities, research organizations, and standard development organizations. And then the study was published on the 15th of March. You can find a link to the scoping study at the bottom of this slide if you wish to look into the evidence on what the currently proposed code is building on. And we then worked on the first draft of the code, which we published on our knowledge valorization platform in May. It was out there for 1 month to launch to enable us to launch a stakeholder consultation on the code already. We ran until mid-June, and we developed all this together with a variety of services across the Commission, practitioners, standard development organizations, in particular StandICT, whose position paper certainly contributed to development of the code. If I may have the next one to talk a little bit more about the content. So the study identifies common success factors for standardization undertakings and found that these can be split into organization-specific factors and common success factors. The success factors have been identified on the basis of interview with 40 best practice projects selected from the respondents to the survey and also based on literature review. This slide here indicates the factors at individual level, or more precisely, organization-specific level. These are the factors to ensure that organization interests are being properly taken into consideration in committees. Among personal competences, the study emphasizes primarily the domain knowledge, the social competences, and I would refer here to the ability to compromise, business skills, and it covers mainly the understanding of strategic and operative effects of the activities on organization. Then on existence of strategic alliances. Here the study refers to the facilitation of assertion of interests and networks and networking skills. And in terms of selection of the right committee, the study emphasizes the more relevant ones know how or technology is for a committee, the more influential one can be. And this is particularly relevant for SMEs who can otherwise have quite limited market power-based leverage. If I may have the next one, please. Yes, indeed. So this slide indicates the factors at macro level. As for thematic fit of participants, the thematic complementarities proved very important, and also the high domain of individual domain expertise. In terms of practical relevance of the project, the gap-filling functionality is very important. The involvement of an industry partner increases likelihood that the standard is later taken up in practice. Previous experience with standardization work is also crucial, and it implies that informal links in committees may lead to future projects. An understanding of how standardization processes work increases the efficiency and effectiveness. The existence of a driving force is also very crucial, so the light-hour effect to motivate others to participate. And finally, the right timing, which depends very much on the driver and technology, choosing the right timing for initiating standardization activities. If I may have the next one, just a snapshot on indicators, which is of course very crucial in such study. It proved to be quite difficult to establish clear-cut performance indicators for the outputs, outcomes, and impacts of standardization activities, because similarly to, for instance, patents, standardization is only one of the many contributing factors to successful commercialization and innovation. Nonetheless, some indicators have been identified for the respective assessment and monitoring progress. At output level, just to name the most important ones, the standardization map created and gaps assessed, and new work item proposals, new working groups established, voting behavior. This, for instance, regards ideas from the research project to measure the industry support, and technical reports suggesting improvements of existing standards or new standards. And at impact level, the use of the standard by the industry and some hard fact results. Also, for instance, whether a newly created workshop agreement or a standard can lead to a lower error margins in measurement procedures, for instance. And this leads me to the recommendations, which is basically focusing on how the beneficiaries of projects can best identify opportunities and techniques to valorize their projects through standardization. The recommendations are based on those success factors I mentioned earlier, and are currently being fine-tuned on the basis of contributions received from the stakeholder consultation. But that is definite that the recommendations are clustered in 3 groups: institutional level, project level, and policy level. And at institution, and then I'm just going to say a couple of words about the 3 boxes. So at institutional level, we mean university and R&I organizations, basically. So what should the different actors do in order to develop standardization policy, so their own standardization policy, to integrate standardization in career plans, and to provide for education and training on standardization. And I would stop here for a second in relation to education and training, because it's really crucial also for the booster project. So the study and the code is very vocal on the need to address the skills gap in training and lecturing. It is essential to build a fundamental understanding of the characteristics and relationships between research processes, innovation processes, and standardization processes, and how they can reinforce each other to boost knowledge valorization. So therefore, the study and the code is coming up with the suggestion of targeted trainings to be delivered first to key executive staff at higher education institutes and research organizations, such as vice deans for research or chief innovation officers, chief valorization officers, ensuring their support for further development of standardization policy in their institutions. And following this, training should be offered to those researchers or heads of department and professors who are most likely to be exposed to the topics of standardizations. So, okay, then I would continue with the second box, with the recommendations at project level, which help consortia, but also mono-beneficiary entities, in case we have mono-beneficiary projects, to understand the standards landscape, to create a common strategic position for the consortium if it is a multi-beneficiary project, and also gives guidance on how they can best involve standardization bodies in the project. And finally, how to make standardization a tangible component of the project. At policy level, it is very important to further promote standardization at knowledge valorization level and to continue the dialogue with member states and other stakeholders. Let me share you with one very important findings of the study, which proves that technology readiness levels is an important indicator for assessing the relevance and performance of an R&I project in terms of the standardization activities. And different TRLs may also imply different needs in terms of standards and standardization, while lower TRLs are typically associated with more work to be done, for instance, on terminologies and concepts, methodology and testing, use cases and reference architectures. Later stage TRLs are typically more concerned with issues such as interoperability and performance of technology and innovation. Hence, the study and also the codes concludes standards across all TRLs are important for researchers and innovators across many technology and application domains. So, and then the next one, please, about the next steps, just for your information. And this relates both codes of practice we are currently developing. We are about to finalizing the drafts in the coming weeks, and we will be then preparing for the adoption and publication by the end of the year, possibly early 2023. And then to have the dissemination of the codes of practice and raise awareness about the content, we will launch an awareness raising campaign on the overarching guiding principles and on the codes of practice in 2023. With this, I reached the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to the subsequent discussions. Back to you, Francesco.
Thank you very, very much, Gergely. It was very informative, and you have painstakingly walked us through the whole process of coming to the code of practice, and it was really nice also to understand which are the next steps that will lead in the following weeks to the publication of the final draft. So I think also for the benefit of the audience, it was really, really helpful, and we are looking forward to see this coming. At this point, before diving into the first roundtable, I'll leave the floor to my colleague Ivana from the University of Belgrade. It will give you a quick overview of the training academy. So the floor for you, Ivana.
Thank you.
Slides are perfect.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, everyone, and I'm happy to be here today to share with you what we have done and what we are planning to do. So basically, my task today is to present to you what is HSbooster Standardization Training Academy. In our project proposal, we provide that we promised that we will provide an efficient mechanism for training. And basically, HSbooster Standardization Training Academy main activities are to develop training packages on 3 levels, 2 for beginners, 2 for immediate users, and 2 for advanced users. On the other side, we are developing a network of standardization experts, professionals, academics, and researchers who are interested in standardization. We are serving as a support for services of HSbooster project, and we are specific in one way. We have very specific target audience or target group. Our target group are researchers. Some main general characteristics of our target group are that they are impartial, they have very sharp analytical and critical thinking skills, and in our journey we can expect a lot of questions, so what and what for. Main channel for transmitting their research results are published paper, our publication, and research paper. They have focus on researchers, but on the other side, they learn from their researchers and researchers of other researchers. In order to find out the best way how to train our researchers, we have conducted a survey based on interviews, and it is ongoing survey. And right now we have results of 21 researchers. The content analysis of interviews with 21 researchers just suggests some let's say, conclusions. Researchers need broader understanding of standardization, not only standardization, but any discipline they are engaging in. Because that influence on active factors, the attitude, motivation, and values. Once we achieved a positive attitude and positive motivation, we have one part of our goal achieved. So motivation might be a problem, not only because of broader understanding or lack of understanding of standardization, but because of lack of time for advancing in something else than their core research area. What might be interesting finding is that researchers have interest in expanding their networks for the future projects, and especially that might be a good channel to outreach our target populations. So basically, our training academy is based on joint effort of standardization experts and researchers with experience in standardization, standardization professionals, and academia and researchers. Based on our work in our first 5 months, we think that there is a lot of academic publications which are related fully or partially on standardization, and that could be a good source for generating something that we might call new knowledge about standardization. But research papers are not ready to use for trainings. Standardization professionals or SDOs has a huge amount of material, and we really need help in orientation. Just for one example, StandICT YouTube channel has more than 300 videos, high quality videos, very usable for training academies, but we really need orientation in that. Standardization experts are focused on very narrow specialization, so we need to generalize their experience in order to benefit our target audience in general. This is our training academy, and right now we developed about 70% of courses, beginner 1, beginner 2, and intermediate 1. But right now we have draft materials, and we need to invest certain effort to put that in good shape for trainings. Related to cooperation with SDOs, we have a role model of how that be the best for our audience, and National Standardization Body of Ireland, NSI, provide us with 10 minutes voiceover presentation for the course Intermediate 1, in which they explaining their case in making standardization practice closer to researchers. We are going in a future month to ask other national standardization bodies to provide us material they already have, or to prepare materials for us. How we would like to develop experience or sense of experience in our target group, in our trainees. Courses Advanced 1 and Advanced 2 are dedicated to exploring experience. So we are going to ask researchers involved in standardization and experts involved in critical standardization areas to provide us information about the state of art in specific areas of standardization, and to provide us their experience and answer to key questions, how to make an impact in standardization. Basically, what we want to achieve with this Standardization Training Academy. Yes, we are developed the learning outcomes for every module we define, but on the other side, it is something that we call expertise. In order to have persons which are able to influence process and outcomes of standardization, we need to enlarge their expertise, improve their expertise, or build their expertise. Expertise is theoretically something related to knowledge, experience, and problem solving. So basically, knowledge, skills, and experience is something what we need to succeed in this segment. So basically, training is planned activity, and we are quite ambitious in our planning. And I hope that this workshop can provide us feedback and can provide us answer, are we on good way, or what experience we should have on our mind. And I'm looking forward for this discussion today, and looking forward to learn new things from you. Thank you all.
Thanks to you, Ivana. It is really good expressing how this workshop is going to be very helpful for us to gather feedback from our experts in view of refining and build up the most comprehensive and efficient training academy. Thanks a lot. So I'm handing it over to my colleague Ray Walsh, and we'll lead the first roundtable. So Ray, you can pick up from here.
Thank you very much, Francesco. Hope you can all hear me okay. And thanks very much, Ivana, for a very comprehensive introduction to what the Training Academy is hoping to achieve and how we're setting out doing that. At this stage in the proceedings, we'd like to introduce our first distinguished panel of guests to you. And I want to invite these specific distinguished panel to turn their cameras on and join myself and Ivana on the stage for the first roundtable session. So I'd like to welcome Brian McAuliffe, Maria Yankovic, and Maitan Alibariov to the stage. So hopefully everybody can be present and have their cameras turned on. I can see everybody so far anyway. At the start, just to get things moving, and as Ivana mentioned, we're looking for advice and feedback in terms of our approach in relation to how we're going about the Training Academy in HS Booster and creating the content and to best address the stakeholders' requirements. And with a view to setting the scene for that, this is where we're going to use the expertise of our first round table panelist session, but also use the opportunity to add your own contributions in the chat, so that we can get a discussion going for feedback, so everybody can get involved and everybody has a view here, and there's no wrong view, and we're trying to provide the best service possible. So to kick the ball off and to introduce the panelists, I'll just say to Brian from Hewlett Packard. Brian, will you please introduce yourself and provide us with a little background by way of introduction as well, just in a couple of minutes. Over to you, Brian.
Thank you, Ray, and good morning, everybody. Happy to be here with you all today on this interesting topic. So yeah, Brian McAuliffe is my name. I lead the standards function here at HP. I'm based in Ireland. I've been with HP for about 6 years now, but I've been in standards for approximately 30 years. Most of that time has been in what I would call regulatory related standardization in Europe, on things like EMC directive, low voltage directive, radio equipment directive, that type of thing, the old CE marking that many of you would be familiar with. But when I joined HP, I've kind of moved into more the ICT standards domain and what one might call a more, sometimes incorrectly, voluntary standardization, because it's all voluntary, right? So I'm very familiar with all the formal SDO processes, SENLEC, ISO ICT, ISO IEC, to less extent ETSI, but more getting more familiar now with the whole Fora and Consortia ICT standards domain also. But getting to why I'm here today, one of my roles is I'm the liaison officer from ISO IEC JTC1 to the European Commission. And as part of that, I engage in the multi-stakeholder platform on ICT standardization. And there I came across the StandICT project and Ray and Silvana. And so when they set up the StandICT Standards Academy, I was asked to chair that group. So I'm kind of here more in that capacity today as chair of that expert group. And we can expand on that more later.
Fantastic, Brian. Thanks very much for that. And also a warm welcome to Maria from CEST. And Maria, will you welcome first and please introduce yourself too?
Yes, thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here today with you. My name is Maria Yankovic. I'm a postdoctoral research associate at CERT, Information Technology Institute in Greece. And my role today is to share experiences from the IOTAC project as a researcher involved in standardization, where I'm leading software architecture and design activities. IOTAC project is ongoing Horizon 2030 project. We have 30 partners from 7 countries and is coordinated by Atos. And the main goal of the project is to provide a secure and privacy-friendly IoT reference architecture and system platform, which is currently being validated in 4 different domains, including energy cells, smart home, autonomous driving, and drones applications. But which is now, I can say, interesting and relevant to our panel is that starting very early from our proposal idea, we were focused on the extension of generic ISO IAC 30141 reference architecture, which is applicable in a wide range of domains, but is actually lacking focus on important security aspects. So currently we are in the third and final year of the project. So I hope that I will be able to share today some useful insights based on our standardization experiences. Thank you.
Fantastic, Maria. Thank you very much for that. And last but not least, I'd like to welcome Mijatovic from SBS. And Mijatovic, can you provide us a couple of minutes to introduce yourself too, please?
Yes, sure. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Mijatovic Olavarria, and I'm the Secretary General of Small Business Standards. For those that might not know, Small Business Standards basically is a European association co-funded by the EU and EFTA, and our main mission is actually to represent SMEs in European and international standardization, and from the different things we do, basically I think it's important to highlight that we aim at increasing the awareness of standardization in general among SMEs and what are the benefits of standardization. A big part of our job is actually to represent their interests in a specific technical committee. So we have experts coming from SMEs that we support in SBS, and we also train that participate in these committees and represent SME interest. And we also aim at try to motivate SMEs in getting involved. Me personally, I have been, as I said, Secretary of General of SBS since January 2020. But before, I have been working in different European associations, for example, from the machinery sector, and as well I was 11 years working in StandICT, so I know quite a lot about standardization processes. And with my participation today, I would like to share a bit the experience from our perspective of SMEs, what are the challenges we face regarding training, and also our experiences. That for what I have heard from Ivana, sometimes challenges seem to be quite similar as well.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Mijatovic. And it's great to get this panel assembled where we have expertise from research and from academia and from industry and from standards development organizations themselves, etc. So without any further ado, because the panels are actually quite action-packed. So to start a discussion here, we just want to talk about a relationship and maybe synergies that are introduced between existing work that's going on now in HSbooster, but also in the StandICT project, where I'm sure there are lots of opportunities to learn from each other. And as you mentioned, Brian, like, you know, you're involved heavily as in the lead and director for the EUOS Academy. And can I just ask you first about the EUOS Academy's approach to training material and some of your lessons learned, like, and discoveries so far?
Yeah, thanks, Ray. So yeah, the EUOS Standards Academy under StandICT, I guess, firstly, I guess there's probably two big differences between HSbooster's training academy and what we do. We're not only focused on researchers and innovators, and in terms of the kind of the subject matter, we're more focused on the ICT domain rather than other broader topics. But people could be excused for being confused maybe about the two separate entities, and I think that there's going to be a good bit of collaboration as we go forward. They're both EU funded projects, so you know we will work closely together. But our approach, and we've been in existence for about a year and a half now, has been, first of all, we recognize that there's a huge amount of training material out there, and that there's different competency levels required and different topics needed to be educated on. So after a few months of deliberation, we came to the sort of approach that we weren't going to reinvent the wheel, and we kind of honed in on the work done in 2019 by APEC, which turned into actually an ISO workshop agreement, IWA 30, two-part, which has a very good framing of competencies, and underneath those, what are the knowledge, skills, and attributes needed to demonstrate those competencies. So since we kind of agreed on using that framework to be the basis on which we'll build our repository of existing training material that's out there, we're now starting to catalog training material from many sources and mapping it onto that structure of knowledge, skills, and attributes, and starting to make it available for anybody to use. I guess one last point on that is the makeup of the StandICT Standards Academy is very broad as well. We have, in fact, SBS where they have been contributing at one stage as well. We have all the societal stakeholders. We've got academia, we've got industry, we've got the commission, we've got some national standards bodies. So we're trying to be as representative as possible. But I guess, yeah, the closing message there is, as HSbooster gets off the ground, we have to make sure that we don't, duplicate, and so we're going to have to figure out a good way to make that synergy work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks very much for that, Brian. And again, it's important, that this type of training material, to support innovation and emerging technologies is put in place, so we have this expansion into the future, and the next generation of standardization experts are being trained. And with that in mind, Mijatovic, because the SME community itself is really important for innovation and emerging technology and development of new applications, etc. But while that it works in a specific direction going forward from the technology perspective, the training might be slightly different. So what would you see has been the biggest challenge facing the SMEs with respect to the current standards training that's available within the European Union?
Okay, I think one of the biggest challenges, and I think this is part of what Brian is referring to, and you are trying to address in both projects, in the StandICT and the HSbooster, is the fact that there are materials, but there are a lot of materials, and it was referred to before by Ivana, and they are not structured. So if you want to know about training, there are not really programs that give you a general overview of what you need to do, and there are materials, but these are not really structured. So it's quite difficult to find your way when you want to learn more about standardization. And this is the same for SMEs that also don't have much time as well. I think what is important, this is something that should be the aim at the end, is to try to address this in basically in curricula. I think we need to arrive to a situation where we integrate standardization in existing curricula, not only of universities, but from the perspective of SME, I think it's important also to include it in vocational training and lifelong learning as well. And finally, even if there are materials, I think a big challenge is that these are not always targeted to SMEs. And I think many trainings are general for the general public, in the sense of all kinds of stakeholders that could be involved or have an interest in standardization. But I think for SMEs, it's important to have short practical trainings focusing on what they need to know related to their own business and company. Because as I said, SMEs are small, they don't have many resources, they don't have much time, so it really need to be targeted. For example, what is the role in product design? What is the role regarding legal compliance with legal requirements, innovation, etc. And I think if we are going to develop trainings for SMEs, it is important to start from the basis of what are the main challenges for SMEs with regard to standardization, and then define the content of the training in order to address those challenges.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Mijatovic. Yeah, I think this is something that's going to come across over and over again is the restructuring in the delivery mechanisms for best packaging the content and repackaging the content that already exists without having to reinvent the wheel, but also to deliver it in a manner that is easier to consume by the public. I think this is something that Ivana probably will be touching on a little bit later on. And an extra dimension then that needs to be considered, which ties very closely with the innovation and emerging tech applications, is research. So if you want to take, as I said, a big picture approach, then you need to look at the research perspective as well. And you're going to bring Maria in on that. So Maria, from your perspective, how can HSbooster Training Academy, how can it best engage with the research community, obviously, because this is directed at Horizon Europe and Horizon 2020 funded projects and valorization of output. So you can use IoT, AC or ITAC as an exemplar here, probably.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I believe that sharing success stories and best practices from other successful projects would be an excellent way to engage with the research community. So there are various techniques that could be applied, such as interviews suggested by Ivana for the Advanced Level Training Academy. I believe that is a very nice approach to attract expert members of the research community focused on the specific standardization areas. However, to engage young or less experienced researchers, I believe that it would be good to provide opportunities for interactions through webinars or, if possible, live events, where researchers with different roles, such as technical experts, standardization experts, or members and leaders of various standardization working groups could share their experiences. Also explain their roles, their tasks, discuss their challenges, and also lessons learned. Yes, I believe this kind of positive motivation would be very nice addition.
Thanks, Maria. I think I wholeheartedly agree with this. I think that the lessons that we've learned across multiple, support actions in relation to trying to provide big picture standardization and training at scale is that it has to be a collaborative. It has to engage with a much wider community, the research community, academic community, the industry themselves, and the stakeholders who have a need for using the outputs and the learnings from the training to help from a globalization and from a scaling and from a valorization point of view to improve on their products and improve their business possibilities. And all of this then brings us back around to where Ivana really started, kicked off the discussion about the focus of the training content and how best to deliver it. And this question will be directed then at you, Ivana. Then, when should the training be more about the impact of standards, or is it sort of general knowledge around standardization and use of standards and or developing standards? So, in your opinion, what should the focus of the training be that's delivered through the academy?
Thank you for the question, Ray. And I think that we need we have to have a different focus. We have specific target audience, but our target audience is not homogeneous. So we have researchers who has no idea what standardization is, but they have results worthy of standardization. On the other side, we have researchers who have respectable experience in standardization, and they need maybe exchange of experience. So I think that we should, and as it was planned, that we should have different levels. But I'm very certain on that general level of standardization is important for researchers to explain them why standards are important. Practice is how. So without explanation why that is important, what is the role of standards at markets, and why are they good channel for valorization of their researches or innovation or solutions, that could be a good point for the future. So do we have to have one focus? Yes, we have, but our even those we have specific audience, they have very different needs. So we have to have some portals, some partial that are focused on some general standardization and some general practice and some general experience. But we all have something specific, and I think that we can achieve that through the sharing experience of or sharing success stories. So.
Thanks very much, Ivana. And just to pick up on that myself, because I've been working on in the area for a while now, I think it's important to help identify for people who are participating in the webinar now and in the workshop, that there is this huge spectrum of education and training that's actually required, from completely ab initio, from zero prior knowledge of standardization, to people who have been involved in standardization, maybe contributing to the development of standards for a while, but would like to know more about how to have greater influence, in the standardization process. So, for example, like, to chair committees and to edit documents and convene working groups, etc. Create new work items, for international committees like ISO and IEC and ITU, IEEE, or for European committees with CENELEC and ETSI, etc. To be better engaged in that process. And so there's a whole spectrum of information that's actually required, and we understand that people also would know about who to contact. And I see a question in the chat already, like asking about who can we contact if I want to get more information about that. And so it's providing information about who your national standards body is, like, and who to contact there. Like, so there's a lot of material that needs to be provided in a more accessible way.
Yes, I agree with you.
And just to try and maybe push forward then on where to go next, like, Brian, maybe bring back in, because of the lessons learned in the EUOS Academy, like, and looking at the description that Ivana has provided and the perspectives from Maria and Maitan as well. How can what collaborative approaches do you think can help with sort of making these synergies between HSbooster and EUOS Academy work?
Yeah, I'll get, just before answering that, maybe just to touch on the last point Ivana made and you comment on, Ray. I mean, that problem about in the research community, which you're focusing on, people not knowing about the why and the how of standardization, that's equally applicable in industry. Sometimes there's this perception that you guys in industry, with all the money and whatever, know all about this. But I can tell you from internally in HP and working in other companies, when I'm sitting in front of a vice president to try and make the case for an investment in a standards committee for a person over 3 years, they don't get it. Okay, so there's a real need for, in industry as well as other areas, for management and decision makers to become more aware of the strategic value of standardization. So again, I'm coming back to, we both have the same requirement there. Okay, but I think there's two points that I'd like to make about where we can collaborate. And already you could see I mentioned this competency matrix, for example, that we talked about in StandICT, and from Ivana's presentation, you showed a matrix or a hierarchy of things that you're working. We need to make sure that they are in some sort of sync and that we're not duplicating there, for sure. And secondly, and I think probably very importantly, is the whole idea of promoting this. So we don't want to both be promoting something that's that's seen by the outside world as similar and overlapping. Do we agree a breakdown of who pushes what, or is there one portal where everybody comes to and then you redirect it for ICT standards and then somewhere else for HSbooster? So that idea of pushing and promoting it, I think, needs a lot of collaboration as well.
Yeah, I think the dissemination will be actually quite important. So the outreach from both projects, like, to make sure that we reach the largest target audience possible. And again, just to reiterate what Brian was saying, is that a lot of people who are on the call now will be maybe have questions about how to engage in standardization and what's the impact of standardization, what's in it for me, all of these type of things. And these type of questions will be answered, like, through these initiatives, through StandICT's Academy, and also through the HSbooster Training Academy, that we will be providing that information, like, and a lot of the time it's actually down to money. If you want to scale your product, service, tool, process, etc., then you need to have this quality mark, which you get. There's no other better way of doing it than through standardization, and that allows you to scale and increase revenue, etc. But it's not all plain sailing in terms of trying to make sure that there are no barriers to entry into getting engaged in standardization. And Maitan, I'll come back to you on this again. Like, so how would you like to see sort of the current challenges and barriers, to maybe engagement from a research perspective tackled in training programs like HSbooster's Training Academy?
Okay, I think I'm going to come back to what just Brian and
Absolutely.
Ivana said.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because this is linked actually with the barriers. I mean, what we see as one of the first barriers and challenges of SMEs regarding standardization is indeed awareness of the added value of standards, why they should care about standards, why they should be using them, what are the benefits. So I think and I think, as Brian said, this is common for industry, this is common for researchers, I think this is common at the end for everybody. So I think in the training program, we need to focus or we need to have a part on that. This is one of the main challenges for SMEs. For SMEs, it's important to know how they, why they are important to access the market, to ensure conformity with legal requirements, how they can use them, or why they are strategic regarding innovation. It can help them to bring innovative products to the market. So these kind of things need to be addressed for sure. And then when we come again back to your question and the barriers, so for me this is a big part that we should address in the academy and in the training. I'm talking from the perspective of SMEs, so it might not be some aspects might not be exactly the same than researchers, but I think the common idea of explaining the benefits of standards is common. The second issue has to do also with access and participation in the standardization process. We were talking about that before. You were also talking about it before. This is an important element. And I think here, before I remember, I think Gergely mentioned the issue of knowledge to be able to participate in technical committees. Yes, you need technical knowledge to be able to participate. But also, as it was mentioned before, you also need to be able to influence these standards. The fact that you have technical knowledge is not always equal to being able to influence the content. And from our perspective, something we do with the training of our experts, we also train them in soft skills, because actually how you influence the process, it has very much to do with how you can negotiate with other parties around the table, etc. So I think this is also an important aspect. It's not only technical knowledge, it's also about soft skills, convincing people and being able to interact with other people around the table. It was mentioned before, and I think regarding participation and access, this is important as well. You also need to know how to find information on the relevant standardization work. And for SMEs, this is one of the biggest barriers. And I imagine this is also might be an issue also for researchers. How can I find out what is ongoing? What are the standards that are relevant for the specific area I'm working on? And there is a lot of information online, but the problem is how you navigate through this information. And I think this should also maybe be part of the training. And then it was mentioned by Maria, and I agree with you. We also did do this with our the training of our experts regarding participation. We have a workshop sometimes with more experienced experts that explain to new experts what are the challenges, what are the problems, and I think this is really important. I think we need to have a practical focus, and if eventually sometime standards bodies would allow, for example, access as the trial, for SMEs, researchers, or other for 12 months in a technical committee, I think that would help a lot as well. But exchange of experiences among more experienced people and less experienced people regarding standardization, I think would help. And coming back with what Ivana said, you mentioned about exchanging about success stories. But I think it's as important to exchange about non-successful stories as successful stories. So I think I would call that, also case studies, probably successful and non-successful, so that we can also learn from what was not so successful. And finally, and I promise to be brief, very important, at least from the part of SMEs is also how you use standards. For SMEs, this is a big challenge. There are very complex standards, and they are not so simple to use. So sometimes, often we need training, specifically when we are talking about new technologies, on how to use these standards, and also basically being able to see, for example, for a specific subject, I don't know, circular economy, which standards I can use to make a circular business model, or also for the application of new technologies, which standards are there that can help me to implement new technologies and how.
Yeah, it's a big area, Ivana, and again, it's fantastic points. And I'll come to Maria directly to just to maybe pick up on some of the research aspects of that. But it's true. Like, I mean, the depth and the breadth of the material that's required, and the scale of which what needs to be done, like, is massive. And we have to start somewhere, like, and it's I just want to pay tribute to the European Commission in particular for funding these initiatives, because it's through the ELITES and the StandICT programs and ADRA-E programs and HSbooster programs, etc., that we're able to make some inroads into satisfying these needs, like, you know, and better preparing the standardization expertise requirements for our European experts, so that we can have that impact on a global stage. And also just pick up on another point on that as well, is another thing that's always a barrier to entry is funding and cost. You know, that it costs money to actually engage, and this is something that needs to be stressed with these programs as well, is that we provide free expertise, you know, free training, you know, via the Training Academy and HSbooster, and also targeted interventions, like, you know, where we match up experts, trained experts in standardization, and provide them as a resource, a paid resource to the projects, the European projects, to allow for that better valorization of research and technology and development innovation outputs. And to get back on track now, just because we're probably a little bit over time due to running behind schedule, we'll start to wrap up now with the last couple of questions. And Maria, as I said, we want to bring Maria back in from the research perspective again, and say, how best can HSbooster's Training Academy support future initiatives like IoTech, like, you know, and other research projects like that? So what would you say is some lessons learned going forward, and how could that interaction be improved going forward, Maria?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yes, actually, it's an interesting question, and I totally agree with my team. Actually, based on our practical experience inside the IoTech project, and considering its nature that we were focused on standardization from the very beginning, we had very clear standardization approach during the proposal writing phase. So we were also very lucky to have our partners from Fraunhofer Focus as our standardization experts, that they provided support during the actually standardization effort. And in line with our main phases, for example, our first phase was selection and adoption of standards. So there I can see that we had an issue to find the right standards, not only for the extension of the IoTech architecture, that was our main goal, but also to support all other implementation activities within the consortium. So in a way, guidance with this first step, selecting the right standards, being sure that the choice is right, is also very important. Some of the challenges there are, for example, that a lot of standards are paid, so you need funding in order to have the access, and it's also time consuming. But going out to our second phase, that is now ongoing phase, which is actually contribution to standards. This is actually a phase that also requires specific skills. So there we are focused actually on active participation and preparation of recommendations. So there is very important to have a very good collaboration on the team level between the technical experts that are preparing the content for the standard, for the recommendation to be included, and also representatives in the technical bodies and groups. So actually, also this access to the right technical committee, it's important, and how to select the right target group. So actually our results were submitted to the ISO IC JTC1 subcommittee 41 in working group 3. And there we have now accepted comment that is going to be included in the second version of the ISO reference architecture. But in parallel, we thought that it would be very useful to share our experiences, and we were actually invited by our partners from Focus to have 2 new working groups at ETSI level, where we are sharing our specification results through one working group, and also experiences with the pilots through another working group. But within all this procedure, I would highlight that it was very important to have, I can see the possible support regarding exactly soft skills, how to be able to present your idea in an easy way to people with a different level of knowledge, how to fight for your idea, how to be good at argumentations. Yeah, indeed.
Fantastic, Maria, and it's brilliant to see the successes coming out of the ISO IEC Joint Technical Committee SC41 for IoT and Digital Twin Working Group 3, and this move on into the work with ETSI as well. This is exactly why we need to increase European leadership in these areas, like, you know, to have European values and our views reflected on the world stage. Now we'll just get back to Ivana sort of as a wrap up towards the end. Ivana, can you tell us, like, I mean, what makes a HSbooster, what puts HSbooster in a position, I think, maybe to deliver on the standards training and the training academy? Like, so what's unique in its approach, and how do you see the HSbooster Training Academy progressing?
From this, progressing from this event, or
yes, from
generally?
This event and in general.
Yes. I read some comments and I read answers, and what we need are not only successful stories, so experience. And what might be some, let's say, feedback from this event is that we might start from early beginning with experience and case studies, and unsuccessful stories and successful stories, to provide our trainees and audience more experience of what's going on out. So I'm inviting all here who are listening this to help us to write very good case studies.
Fantastic, Ivana. And this is it. I've been watching the chat and I've been watching the questions and answers and people engaging, yourself and Brian and various panelists, like engaging with the community in this. And I'm going to ask each of you for a takeaway point, you know, just a key message that you want to give to the audience. You know, I'm going to go around on each of you individually. And while you're thinking about that, I just want to say that my key reference point is always in terms of collaboration. It's to not reinvent the wheel, use the expertise that's already out there, engage in as wide and as broad a manner as possible with all stakeholders. And we are all in it. It's not an us and them. We're all in this together. It's an us and us situation. We have SMEs, our researchers, and our academics as well, and our enterprise, and vice versa. Academics are also working in enterprise, and ours can be SMEs, and industry can be big industry, small industry. It can be from a research perspective. So there's a lot of overlap in our requirements, and that communication and that collaboration is essential for these type of initiatives, which are grand scale initiatives, which have major impact and are cause a sea change in technology adoption and scaling and globalization, digital transformation worldwide are really, really important. So just to do a quick round trip, then starting with Brian, just a quick takeaway for the audience.
Yeah, just a quick comment first before the quick takeaway. I was going to say, you know, one of the key standards training that's needed, and one of the comments that I answered was about the IEEE's program that they have, where they create a role play situation for, you know, how to do standards in a committee. But I was going to say, you know, one of the key things to learn is how to negotiate over coffee at a standards meeting, all right? Because that's where all the work happens. But I think that now has to be replaced with how to do standards over Zoom, all right? Because I've traveled only once in the last, you know, 18 months, and I'm still doing standards online. But it kind of leads me into one of the key takeaways I have, which is the format of the training that we put into either academy or both academies. It has to be multimedia. You know, people's consumption preferences are different. And I think that there has to be a lot of short, snappy courses that people can take during a 5-minute, 10-minute, half-hour break. They can't be, you know, long 50-page documents to read and that sort of thing. So that the format of the courses is important. But also, I think the last point I'm going to make is that even though I said at the beginning, StandICT Academy is more about ICT standards and HSbooster is kind of broader. Again, that's really all muddying, and with digital transformation everywhere, then ICT standards are everywhere, and the role that consortia play in conjunction with STOs, formal STOs I'm calling them, needs to be better understood, and there's a role for each, and it's horses for courses. One is not bad, one is not good, so that really needs to come across as well in standardization training programs.
Thanks very much, Brian. And Maitan, can I ask you for a key takeaway message for the audience as well?
Okay, so I would say that for me, the main takeaway is that training needs to be practical and experience is very important. So it needs to be introduced there. And I would also highlight from my point of view that it is also important to focus on the use of standards and their benefits. That's also important.
Thank you very much.
Just a last word. Just wanted to point out that SBS is also involved in a Stand.EU. There is is another project. There is a bit of a training component as well. Is focusing also on research, barriers to contribution of research into standardization and which remedies we can have. There is a component of training, and I think it's important that all projects, HSbooster and StandICT, but also other projects cooperate, because it's important to have as much as possible a central place where we can find all training materials.
100% agree with that, Maitan. Thanks. Maria, your quick takeaway point?
Yes, well, my point would be that it's very important to learn constantly and to expand your general knowledge, but also to try to be as much as possible active on all levels, national, European, international, as standardization procedures are usually very lengthy, and usually they take more than duration of the project itself.
And last but not least, Ivana, you get the final word on a takeaway point.
Oh, we have to go to another discussion there waiting for us. What to say? A lot of impressions, and I'm so I just point that synergy is maybe what we need, and collaboration between different parties, different actors in standardization should be base for training academy, not this training academy, but only every training academy. So I think the one conclusion word is synergy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivana, and thanks everybody for your contributions. There's loads of activity happening in the chat. Apologies that we don't have time to go through a lot more. We could keep going forever. I want to just offer my special thanks to Brian McAuliffe, to Maria Jankovic, to Maitan Olivera, and to Ivana Mijatovic for the contribution. Thanks everybody, and talk to you all soon. Take care.
Thanks everybody. I would move straight to the second roundtable discussion without any further delay. So I'll leave the floor to my colleague Pernille, that will lead the conversation. I'll leave the floor to you, so you can start right away with your guests.
Well, thank you everybody, and good afternoon, and welcome to this next panel discussion. I think we have already sort of kicked our way into a lot of good discussion points, and a lot of good ideas have already surfaced. So I think we already have a really good point of departure for this next part of the discussion, where we are going to talk about the current training and educational programs. So I would like to invite our panel. We have a really good panel today, and I would like to thank you for taking your time to be with us. I would allow you briefly to introduce yourselves. So I would like to hand over to Daniel Masso Aguado. If you could just briefly introduce yourself and who you are and what your capacity is in relation to this topic. And then we'll pass on to Herman and then David and Ashok and then finally Daniele. So if we could do it in that order, I think we could kick our way quickly into the discussion for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Daniel Massó, and I work for UNE, which is the national standardization body in Spain. My background is a forest engineer, but I've been working, well, after some sort of short work as consultant, I've been working for standardization for over 20 years. And part of my tasks, my position is head of knowledge and 2030 agenda, and part of my task is developing training on standardization. So we develop training not on standards but on standardization in UNE. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for the invitation. My name is Hermann Behrens from DIN, the German Organization for Standardization. And at DIN, I'm head of research and science relations. And at DIN, I'm also a member of the STAIR group. And on the European level, in the STAIR group, we have an exchange of all these people who deal with research and standardization and change our views. That is the one point. The other point is at DIN, I'm responsible for a high-level committee on research and innovation and standardization. And I think it is an important point to have a discussion on all these things, to have a discussion on a very high level point about it, and that is what we are doing. And in addition, in cooperation with Knut Blind from the Technical University of Berlin, I have a lecture on standardization at the Technical University of Berlin. And I think it's also a good way to bring the idea of standardization to future people.
Well, thank you so much, Herman. And then moving on to David.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning and afternoon. David Boswadek, I work for ETSI, one of the three ESOs, alongside Ashok and Sensenelec. My job in ETSI is Director of New Emerging Technologies, which involves three things: outreach to researchers, technology tracking, and also welcoming new work into ETSI. A fourth thing could be being involved in the education about standardization activities as well, which is more relevant in this context. There you go. I'll keep it short. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Ashok.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak in this panel. The first panel today really set the bar high, I think, with introducing so many issues. But I've been involved in standardization for 20 years plus, and if nothing else, it's a family. It's a thing with many elements, and it's about pulling those elements together and making the most value. I suppose that I'm the counterpart to what David does in ETSI in Sensenelec, and also as Herman's mentioned, we have the Sensenelec members have the common STAIR group, Standards, Innovation and Research. And that represents a place where is the focal point where Sen and Senelec set out their stall many years ago, which is that researchers and innovators aren't going to just migrate to Sen and Senelec. We have to go out and find them. We have to go out and make links with them. We have to go out and show what standardization is. So the idea for an academy, training academy, is exactly on the nail for that. And I'll got some other ideas which I'll be happy to feed in the discussion as we go. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, Daniele.
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Daniele Gerondino, and well, I'm a physicist by education, but I've been Assistant Secretary General of ISO for 20 years until 2017, and also been responsible for the coordination of the standards and governance specialization in 2 master's programs run by the University of Geneva, Standardization, Social Regulation, Sustainable Development, and Innovation, Human Development and Standardization, where the standards and governance component was, specialization was one of the main specialization of these 2 full 2 years masters. And in that period of time and until now, I've done a lot of work in this area. And just to underline that the main things that I'm still considering right now, that even if I am a retired person, but with many activities going on, is on the connection between sustainability, standardization, and innovation. On that part, you might have seen a publication published by UMIDO 2 years ago that was rebooting quality infrastructure for a sustainable future, and the lead author of that publication, and of many other things that we may explore in what comes on. I'm sorry to say that I have to leave probably close to 1 hour because I have a steering committee meeting of an important project starting rightly at 1:10. So I may just excuse myself for the need to leave your panel earlier. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, everybody. I think time is already running and we don't want to keep our audience, away from their lunches. So I think we could dive straight into the discussion. I know a lot of things have already been debated. We had some really good key takeaway points from the last session, talking about format, to develop a collaboration with different actors, and also that training needs to be practical and experience is important, etc. So we had a lot of good points, so we already addressed. But what I would like to ask you this time around is what do you think are the biggest challenges right now facing current training and education programs offered at European levels? Would one of you like to give your thoughts on that? Because I think it's important that we understand the current landscape. Yes, Daniel?
Hello. Yes, may I start? Yeah, for me, the main challenge is the competence, because I mean, we are flooded with information. There is a training about everything, and there are very, very excellent training on these free platforms. Almost every university has free training programs and so on. So to catch the attention of the potential users and the potential interested attendants for this training is very, very difficult. So because this is my thought.
Thank you for that. I think it's very important, and that is also what Herman was stressing, that reaching out to the audience or to the people that they don't necessarily know that they need this kind of information. I think it's very key. Does anybody else would like to say something to that point? Yes, David?
Yeah, I'll get the ball rolling.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
and then to Herman. And leave it to Herman afterwards. Yeah, I mean, there are many challenges. First of all, I think we'll all agree there's a lot of information already out there being everywhere. I think probably there's several training academies there. Most ESOs and STOs have guidance and information and videos and webinars and training. There's information everywhere. The trouble is the people who need to know don't know where the information is. So what we need to work on is identifying who needs to know what, and then guiding them or carrying them, taking them by the hand towards the information. So you have a concept of focus, and also maybe a mentorship, that you actually bring somebody to the information. And that's a big challenge. Knowing the audience, different levels of education, different levels of work within research organization, universities, students, they all need similar information, but in a different manner. So focus and carrying the people to that information is the biggest challenge, I think.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I think it's a really important point. So the issue around visibility. And Herman, what did you have something to say to that as well?
Yes, I absolutely agree what my colleague said. We have a lot of materials in different forms, and it is not a problem to find the material. But I think the standardization organizations, they tend to describe very often the internal view of standardization, and I think that is not what researchers need. They need to know something about the strategic benefit of standardization, and that is what we have to tell them. And I don't know what the best form is of it, but we don't have to tell them all the details of standardization work. I think it's not necessary. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Yes, Daniel?
Yeah, if I may, it's also, I think we have to be clear, there is a very, very significant distinction between education and training. I understand that here the Training Academy main focus is to provide training services to researchers. That's one aspect, but I think if we take a broader picture, one of the problems in general terms, so if we talk mainly about education and education in universities, is the fact that at least in Europe and in the United States, we do not have yet standardization as a discipline or a scientific discipline well established, in spite of existing a number of things. This is a main issue. And if you go and see how standardization is teached in several ways in universities, you see that it is for the vast majority still a minor element that is surfacing here and there. If you read the publication that we did in ISO Teaching Standards, it's a few years old, but still gives you a very good perspective of how this is practiced in different universities. But the main point for me is that this is still lacking a clear identification of standardization as a discipline. And then there's a lot of elements connected to that.
Thank you. Does anybody else have, Ashok, did you want to reflect on this first point before we move on? Because I think the next question I have is, you know, should the training also address technical and thematical issues? And I think from what we just heard Daniele say, you know, that there is sort of a need to both have, or the issue, the challenge is that we do not have standardization as a discipline. So is that something that we would need, or do we need to have sort of a more topic related focus on standardization at different levels in trainings and education programs?
Perhaps if I can come back on that. I mean, I'm not sure I'm answering the question head on, but clearly we've got a challenge. We've always had a challenge. Standardization, at least for StandICT, grew up in the mid-20th century, really just focusing on responding to the needs of industry, the very well-defined needs of the mechanical engineering and civil engineering industry in Europe. And so there wasn't really much mystery. It was just a matter of having a function, standardization, which would produce those standards which were known and needed today. And that was okay. That lasted for about 50 years. But the world's moved on, and now there is a focus on upstream, new knowledge coming from various sources. I think there are two things that we've always needed to juggle, and that is the finite detail of the processes internally in standardization to ensure fairness, to ensure that the voices are heard, to ensure that there's a good discussion leading to consensus, the magic golden word. But of course, standardization has already been said by a number of the colleagues. Standardization is dominantly a tool for the market. And what does it mean to use a standard? What does it mean to use a group of standards, which maybe some relate directly to your business, some relate to your business going green, some to the sustainability of your business? Standardization is a huge range. So we need to juggle that. We need to juggle that and to get it right. No, don't ask me what getting it right is. Probably Daniel is absolutely right in that it needs to become, you know, higher level in terms of academic. As somebody, an old boss of mine said to me a long time ago when I first joined standardization is a Cinderella industry. I understood from that they meant standardization, there's not a lot of money floating around. You have to use your resources intelligently. There isn't any excess in the system. It's probably true of most industries today. Most activities, there's not so much money floating around. But if you take that, who's going to do the work? Who's going to put it together? Who's going to make it fit? There's a task for all of us, and there's a lot to learn. There's a lot being learned. There's a lot to learn.
Yeah, and I think also this ties into somebody mentioned earlier, it has a lot to do with resources, because obviously we can't do everything for everybody. So it's also how do we sort of tailor it in a way that makes sense to the most people when they need it. I hear that's very much so. What should the focus of the training be? I mean, how should we decide or figure out the balance between technical and thematical issues, and then a more general level knowledge about standardization? What's the panel's reflection around that? Is anybody? Yeah, Daniel.
Yes. Yeah, for me, I don't know. I think we need a sort of general knowledge, but at least in my experience, the standardizers, we are very bad at doing that, because we try to put a lot of information there, and the users, they don't require to have very deep insights about how the standards are developed and so on. So I think that we need to focus a little bit more on their needs. So what do they need? They need to use a standard for a strategic placement of a product in the market, for the use of standards in the public procurement, for the use of standards supporting legislation, whatever. So we need to give examples on how to do that. And for them to learn this, they just need a very short general knowledge about the standardization procedures. They need something that, okay, the system can be trusted, and it has some things, some general features that, of course, will give you trust, but that's it. And the rest, it has to be very, very focused on their needs. And I'm not sure if we do know their needs. So we still have to work on that.
Herman, you have comment to this.
Yes, I think it's correct what to say, and I think we need to give a general view on standardization. That is what we know, and that is, from my point of view, it is important to give it. But on the other hand, we are talking with researchers, and the researchers are working on future fields, and it's not so easy to have an expert to give content to this field. We don't have the people who can do it, and it's not so easy to find a solution for both, for the standardization process and for the content.
Yeah, I certainly think that's a challenge for many of us working at Danish standards, for example. You know, we don't often have the experience of implementation of certain standards, and that is sometimes the information that is missing out there, and that is actually being requested of us, and that's where we come up short. Yeah, but moving on, I think maybe to the next question. So what platforms would also be necessary? I mean, here we're talking about different types of training, different levels of information, and also sort of creating that kind of visibility of reaching the, you know, the researchers and innovators out there. So what platforms would be recommended to go about this task? Yes, David?
It kind of links into the last question. Again, it's audience. So we're mixing up several areas here. Let's say students in universities doing technology studies and maybe even business studies, they need to be introduced to standardization, to know what it is, to know the value of it. And value basically relates to money and enabling markets. So that's something that needs to be taught from a very young age. We need to work with university lecturers to ensure they actually get that on their curriculum and educate the students to know about that. Standards is a little bit, when we saying telecoms, a bit like security. You think about it afterwards. We need to think about standards up front and educated up front. So that's one area. The other one, which was also introduced in the last intervention, was research projects. So when you're looking at national funded, European funded, internationally funded research projects, even private research, we need, so we all, I love what Ashok is saying, is we're a family, we're a community, we need to work together because we don't have the resources to do it all ourselves. So together we need to ensure that in the projects, national, European, in this context, we ensure that they consider the standardization roadmaps and match it in with their research roadmaps and actually build in modules to that in their research propositions, getting expertise from people who know about standards inside their consortia. And this can be enabled by StandICT or HSbooster. We can help in those areas. So just two areas, education in universities and working in research projects, are already two aspects which are really worth focusing on. And then there are others. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I would like to add a couple of things. First of all, stepping perhaps a little back with the previous question also, exactly, I think it is a very different landscape if you're talking about education, about standardization, or training focused to provide various type of services in this area for researchers, if this is the target audience of this work. And in that sense, I think there is on the one hand, a lot of materials, very interesting materials and experiences, case studies, linking standardization and innovation, apart from also the theoretical perspective, how standardization can combine or be integrated in the research and development cycle. This is our friend Gudlund Blind has done a lot of good work on that part. But apart from that, there are very excellent stories that can be told. If you read the publication Standardization and Innovation with the proceedings of what we did the workshop some years ago with CERN, there are fabulous stories of how standards have been enabler of unleashing innovation. And this is something that could be very important. The other thing is to provide more, I would say, specific criteria and elements on what you can do in your research projects and what level can be. And the practical way to deliver that, the best way today in a realistic, of course, it depends on the resources available, but is on online resources. For courses, definitely is the issue of MOOCs. You know, that's clearly the point. But for training, I'm pretty sure that to have a collection of targeted online training that focus on specific aspects, but also provide that are probably this short when focused on what they can deliver in these things, also providing I mean example of success stories or interesting stories of how standardization has been an enabler of innovation. But definitely I think a library of targeted videos that can also be used by teachers in presenting things would probably be the most effective way. Then depends on the resources you have to be able to put that together.
Thank you so much for that. I think that also ties into sort of the question around outreach. You know, what outreach activities are relevant, you know, because if you have different platforms, you have different audiences, but what outreach activities would then be relevant to make the target group aware of the existence of this material? Would anybody like to? Yes, Herman?
Yes, I think it's one of the most important things. People have to know that there is material, that there is existing material about standardization. And from my point of view, it is very helpful and very good to have kind of cooperation agreements with research organizations. For example, in Germany, we did it with Fraunhofer, one of the biggest research organizations in Europe, and in this cooperation agreement, we can define all these things. We can write down what we want to do together with them, and I think that is important because we have to get in touch with them. So that is one point, and the other point is what I said at the beginning. We need in the standardization organizations a high-level group on a high-level committee on the strategic benefit for researchers in standardization. These two things are, from my point of view, very important.
Thank you for that. Anybody else on this point? Yes, Ashok?
Yeah, just to add to that, I think well, we probably have supplying any answers, but we recognise the challenge, and I mentioned in StandICT several years ago, this real recognition that we needed to be better connected to the research and innovation communities. There are plenty of organisations out there at European level who need to be, we need to be linked with, we need to be known by, we need to have a visibility towards. And we've done a small thing, It's in its 4th annual edition this year, and next Monday afternoon we will have the StandICT Innovation Awards, where we will award issue awards to a research project that has contributed to standardization, an individual researcher and a young researcher. So that will be a relatively short event online next Monday afternoon. If you look at the StandICT website, if you're interested, you can join. But that's one very, very simple way, and it seems to work to some extent, to raise the profile. One of the other things, just coming back to something that somebody said earlier on, when there are brand new areas where we don't have existing technical committees, that provides a completely different challenge. But with our friends in the Joint Research Centre of the European Commission, we've done for about the last 10 years an annual action called Under the Banner of Science into Standards. And that, working with the Commission services to put together an audience of researchers, policymakers, from our side, standard bodies, standardizers, and those have really produced a first entry point, a first action to bring brand new topics. Organ on chip was the one a couple of years ago, was brand new, not known to standards at all. So it is possible, not saying it's easy, but it is possible to address brand new topics and bring them in to standardization. And especially, of course, for us in Europe, where Europe has maybe a leading role in the research.
Thanks for that. Any other comments on sort of the outreach activities? How we can improve on reaching the target groups?
Well, the point is that it is really to be able to leverage on existing relationships and do joint activities. That's the secret, I think. And it is that, well, you have connection with research institutes, as Herman was saying, like with the Fraunhofer, that's an excellent starting point, the relationship with the JRC, but also relationship with companies or from individuals in technical committees that have done fantastic work in moving forward. The point is to be able to capitalize and to have somebody that can, help and work together to actually capture the knowledge and to structure in ways that can be provided and made useful for these purposes. But it is leveraging the existing relationship and to have the resources and funding to be able to put together from the existing, but there are fantastic people. I mean, think of the MPEG group in ISO and the incredible things that they have done. And this provides you with the possibility to capture and put together dozens of lessons and activities that can be provided as models for bringing together research and standardization. Just to make an example, but you have in it large variety of fields. And let me just spend one word on that. I've heard very little today, just a couple of comments talking about sustainability. But this is actually our imperative today. And for research and development and standardization, if we do not tailor our activities focused on innovation for sustainability, not sustainability, innovation and sustainability. That is a paradigm that we really need to have behind. And this is a huge change also in the way that standards are developed and the whole quality infrastructure considered. So this is a message that I would like to bring very, clear and loud. Connecting standardization and sustainability is absolutely of imperative need. That is also something, okay, in this context that should be taken very well. And this applies to technologies, applies to a lot of things, but if you start including sustainability as a primary imperative goal, that changes a lot the perspective of how things are done.
Thank you for that. And I think time is running out here. So just a key takeaway from each of you I'd like to hear. So what are the most critical elements that HSbooster Academy should address? And obviously we can't address everything in the Training Academy, but some 2-3 suggestions from each of you. I think that would be interesting to hear. So who would like to go first before we? Yes, Ashok?
Yeah, if I can just say, Of course, the word standard is, especially in English language, is very deceptive. It has many, many different meanings. We're talking about standards and standardization in a very specific sense. There are lots of organizations out there that offer very nice standards and very nice systems, and I'm not denigrating anybody's standards at all. But in Europe, we have the three European standards organizations, StandICT and ETSI. They all have their look to the international counterparts, and that gives a global perspective for our standardization. And I think that is an element that needs to come through. Again, it's not to downplay anybody else's standards, because they're perfectly legitimate, but you're part of a system through StandICT, ETSI, ISO, IEC-ITU. It's a robust system. It's tried and tested over time, you know, tens of thousands of standards. Not because there are more standards, that means it's better, but they're standards that the market players have defined and needed. So I think how that system works, it's a real thing. Europe invests such a huge amount into that system that it would be sensible to make the most of it.
Thank you for that, Ashok. So who would like to go next with the 2-3 recommendations? Yeah, David.
Yeah, to keep the continuity in the ESOs. Fully agree with everything Ashok said, as usual. 3 recommendations, it's really hard, but use what exists. There's a lot of information out there. Use what exists, identify it, catalog it, see duplications, see things which are out of date, and then update what is missing. So a nice gap analysis on what is needed, what exists, and what needs updating. 2 is identify the audience. Who are we talking to? Who needs to be educated? Who needs to be informed and guided? Different markets, different focus audiences, and they have similar core needs, but very specific individual needs. And 3, I think I'll come back to what was said several times, is we have limited resources. We can't do this alone. So let's team up as we like to call it the standardization family, and help each other out. We work together. We have our individual scopes. We have similar knowledges. So let's do it as a family together and work together with the limited resources we have. 1, 2, 3. There you go.
Thank you. And Daniel.
Just one. Focus on communication, because it's very difficult to reach the exact people. And I'm sure that there are many things that we have not explored. I don't know, maybe Facebook groups, whatever, LinkedIn, many things. And I'm sure that we are not reaching. I mean, there's a huge potential. If you see the power of standardization is immense. There's a European strategy on standardization. Many companies are aware of this, but even in an event very, very good like this one, there are 100 attendants or less than this. So we need to make a huge effort on communication, and probably using our imagination in the ways that we have not done it for the moment.
Thank you for that. So we have 2 more. Herman, you would like to give your final thoughts?
Yes. First, I would like to say that we are, from my opinion, we are on a very, very good way. Some years ago, it was a very small community which was talking about standardization and innovation, or standardization and research. And today we have a project like this, like HSbooster. It's very, very very good, and we are on a good way. And my takeaway message is we have to get in contact with the people from the research community. We have to talk to them. Communication is very, very important, and we talked about all the different ways to get in contact to them, and I think we have to do it. That is, from my point of view, is the most important thing. And the other point, researchers very often look to the political level. Yeah, they look for research programs. They look for what is the European Commission doing, and we have also talked to these people who are responsible for research programs, and we have to tell them that they have to integrate standardization in their programs. Thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, Daniele.
Well, yes, if I many things have already been said by the colleagues. My only point that I would like to stress, as I said before, is that don't forget actually to consider taking really sustainability as one of the core, I would say, element for integrating content. And this applies particularly in relation to innovation, because if we do innovation at the fourth industrial revolution, etc., without having the sustainability imperative in mind, what we're going to do is just to speed up our destruction, to make it faster, to go somewhere that we do not want. If you do that for developing new gadgets that take enormous consumptions of resources, materials, and energy to be produced, used, and then discarded, then we are dead. The point is that this could be an opportunity to inject this thinking in the framework of, I would say, research and development. So how this could be incorporated, and standardization can do a lot of benefit in that direction, but not necessarily. It is also standardization that needs to rethink some of its background, because if we are doing developing standards for exploration in the Arctic, which is a committee that it is now very nice, so we are totally off track. The point is that what we need to do is not responding, but really having this imperative in mind. And I think this is a good opportunity for an initiative like this, also to connect with the Green Deal and all the other, paraphernalia that you have in Europe in this context. But that's a very, very significant message to integrate with all the other things.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think that's very, very important also going forward. And I think also it's something that in our experience is also attracting young people to standardization, because they want to be part of creating the solutions for the future. So highlighting also the value of sustainability and connecting it to standardization, I think is a key, very important point. But anyways, I think time has run out, unfortunately. I think your thoughts and ideas have been highly appreciated. I think a lot of people have been taking notes, and we will integrate your recommendations and ideas into the training academy going forward. I would also like to thank the audience that have listened in, and I hope it hasn't been too boring for you. And I hope that you have also learned some new things about also what is actually out there already. And some of it is working, obviously, but we would like to sort of package it very nicely together so that, we can bring it out to a larger audience. So thank you for that. Over to you, Francesco.
Thank you very much, Pernille, and thanks, Ray, for having managed such a very engaging roundtable. So it's very quickly wrap up time before everybody's leaving, and some of our speakers fully understand that. I really hope you might have enjoyed this workshop, and I'm sure also you might have gained, as we did, a lot of insightful takeaways from the workshop, and a better understanding on the current discourse on and activity on education and standardization. So we are not done with our events at all. We have more in the pipelines from here to the end of the year, and more expected in 2023, not uniquely related to education and standardization and to the training academy. And I would also like to stress once more that the recorded workshop will be available on our channels tomorrow, so you can get back to this and re-enjoy it over and over again if you might have missed something. And finally, I would like warmly to thank all of the more than 100 persons that joined us today among our audience, and all of you, the speakers that accepted our invitation to join us in this panel. Your contribution has been really super valuable, and it will be very valuable in the coming weeks, that when the time will come to set up the actual academy, and we will be able to run the first delivery of the services for our project. So really thanks a lot to all of you. And I wrap up here. Thanks again. Enjoy your lunch break, and follow us on our social media so you will be fully updated on everything we do and our coming plan and the events. Thanks once more. Enjoy the day. Take care to all of you.